Well, welcome to A Mirror Darkly, Unbridled Inquiry. We are back. We weren't sure if we were going to be here, but here we are. I apologize for the fact I have no eye makeup on. I looked at myself in the camera. I'm like, wow, this is scary. But I totally forgot. And so
I
anyway.
never wear eye makeup. Nobody's
Yeah, well, you
scared
have
by that.
glasses on. My face looks really blank. Well, I need to do something because my face looks really pale in this lighting too, on camera. I've been thinking about that. So, but anyway.
Well, as we upgrade and get better at this, then,
Yeah. Well, maybe somebody will volunteer to be my makeup and hair people. So.
yeah.
But anyway, so here we are. We're almost to Christmas, and
Yep, this coming week,
yep, and
Friday.
I'm off from work now. Yay! For 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and
I survived the surgery, obviously.
yes, and he's feeling better. So we are here webcasting. So we're glad you guys are here. We run the show in 10-minute segments. So at the end of the segment, I will bring up any comments or questions that people have. You come up with a show idea. We're always open to new show ideas. We want to bring you guys content that you want to see or hear. If we brought you content you wanted to see, we wouldn't be on camera.
Be somebody else.
Yeah, we put two really good-looking people on there and just talk for them with our lips in their thing, like that thing that they do on TV, that trick photography thing where Jimmy Fallon used to, where they switch lips.
Yes.
So yeah, but anyway, so but yes, content you want to hear and discuss. So anyway, so let us know. I'm still. Oh, I guess not. I thought I was still inviting people. What happened to my party?
Don't know.
To my watch party. I don't know, I must have bumped something. Okay, so anyway, so nuts. Let me see if I can get it again.
We do this in 10-minute segments.
Yes, I already said that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll set my timer. I just somehow messed up my watch party. So hopefully, yes, there we go. Okay, we're back. Okay, so anyway, we'll go ahead and get started with the world. Oh, I got to tell you a quick funny story. So he has the Good Place app on his Google account.
It's amusing.
Yeah, because it's amusing, and we used to watch The Good Place. Anyway, so I get up here we're in a sound booth in the back of the sanctuary, and so I got up in here to finish inviting people to the watch party and to grab my coffee and get set up and stuff. And I looked at the title. It says, "The world is not going to hear in a handbasket." And I laughed. I go, "You made a mistake when you put in the title." I was going to edit it. Well, for you guys on Facebook, it says, "The world is not going to hell in a handbasket." But because of the Good Place app, we can't have words like HE double hockey sticks. So they change it to here and uncapitalize it. So
Yes.
Anyway, you're seeing it correctly. We're not.
It's a what's it called? Something that you add to Chrome.
It's an add-on.
Yeah.
Or an extension?
Extension. It's a Chrome
Okay,
extension.
they have add-ons and they have extensions.
Yeah, it's a Chrome extension. Back when The Good Place was on, they offered this for The Good Place, and I thought it would be funny, and I found it amusing. One of the things I find particularly amusing about it is that it changes the name of anybody named Dick to Dink.
And you can't use the F word to change it to fork.
Yes,
Yes.
it does that too.
So
it's funny.
Yeah, it just is annoying because when I'm on his computer, it keeps popping up these little things like, "You've been online too long."
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
the other thing it does.
Yeah, it
too.
reminds you to get offline.
Yeah.
It also gives you your good place and bad place scores, so you know at any moment if you drop dead, which place you'll be going to.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
So
Anyway, I
me get
suppose
my
since the show is no longer on the air, eventually I'll have to uninstall it because you're not going to be continuing to support it, and it'll eventually get too old to work properly.
yes.
Oh well.
So
One of the notions that people have, and it's an odd one, actually there was an article on humanprogress.org by Matt Ridley. He's the author of The Rational Optimist, which is a very good book. I'd highly recommend it. You can get it on Amazon easily enough. The title of his article is "Why Is It So Cool to Be Gloomy?" And one of the things he talks about in the article, he says that the Swedish statistician and public health expert Hans Rosling began in 2013 asking a question. And the question was this: has the percentage of the world's population that lives in extreme poverty, it is the percentage of people living in extreme poverty, has it almost doubled, almost halved, or stayed the same over the past 20 years? Now, what would your choice be? Probably.
Well, I know what the answer is.
You know what the answer is because I've talked to you about it.
But based on what you hear on the news and the late night commercials with the Arms of the Angels song, that, you know, like the alternative Happy Birthday song, Death and Dying Everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. So you would imagine that it would be pretty bleak.
Yes.
If not doubled, maybe more than that. But, you know, especially when you think of the third world, maybe not in America so much. But although to listen to the politicians, you know, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Which is not true, actually, statistically. It's actually the poor are getting richer. But anyway, we'll get into all of this. When the Swedish statistician, public health expert, did the questioning, 1,005 Americans he asked this question of, and only 5% of them got the answer right. He said that chimpanzees doing things at random would have gotten closer to giving the right answer. Because the right answer is that extreme poverty in the last 20 years has declined by half. And actually the UN is predicting that by the year 2030, extreme poverty will no longer exist, which is a remarkable accomplishment.
Now, what is the definition of extreme poverty? Because we do have poor people.
Yes, there's a difference.
Okay.
Extreme poverty means that you're just on the edge of being able to survive to the next day. That is, you don't know whether or not you're going to be able to eat tomorrow.
Okay.
And that's defined, and this is consistent with inflation.
Okay. So
this is adjusted for inflation. So it means that you're living on less than $2 a day. If you're living on less than $2 a day, you have a good chance, you're just on the edge of maybe starving to death. And so that level of poverty, if we go back to, say, 1950, I think it was more than half the world was living in that state. Right now, it's less than 10%. And as I said, by the end of this decade, 0% of the world will be living in that state. Actually, the average Jordan Peterson was pointing this out. I forget. He was talking to Steven Pinker, who we'll get to as we go along, because he's an important individual in this, keeping track of this sort of thing too. He's written 2 very well done books that have done quite well. Bill Gates gave the one that came out in 2018, Enlightenment Now, he gave that free to all college graduates in the United States because he thought it was that important of a book. And so Steven Pinker is arguing in the same direction. And of course, Bill Gates would argue the same way as well, because that's what the statistics show us, that the world is actually getting better and better and better. That is, that's why you have this website, humanprogress.com, because things are actually going well.
Is it .com or .org?
Or .org. Did I say?
Okay, because I've told people .org, and then I'm like,
it's
no.
.org. Sorry, humanprogress.org. But in any case, the world is actually improving, despite the fact that people tend to think that it's not. And one of the interesting things Ridley Scott discusses in this particular article that I'm referencing today, among other things, is that there are reasons why people will tend to assume things are going poorly. And one of those is that bad news is more sudden than good news, because good news is usually kind of gradual. It is the improvement statistically is a gradual thing. Bad news, though, is some sudden crisis. Something horrible has happened, like an airplane has crashed. Now, that's the other interesting thing. People are inordinately afraid of flying, which is an entirely irrational thing. you're more likely to die in your bathtub than you would ever die flying. In fact, the statistics on flying are such that if you were to fly every day of your life, 24/7, how is it that you probably die?
Probably not in a plane crash. Probably
Old age.
Oh,
That's how safe it is to fly. Flying is the safest thing that you can possibly do, just about. That's how safe it is. In 2017, for instance, you know how many commercial jetliners crashed?
0.
0. I haven't seen statistics since, but that's pretty close to what it is, despite the fact, you know how many people fly each year?
A lot. If you look at the map of all the planes that are up in the air at any given time, it's pretty insane. Like, you can't even see the United States. It's covered in little tiny airplanes.
4 billion
Yeah.
people fly every year. You want to do something safe? Take a flight.
I love to fly.
Flying is very nice. It's the safest thing that we've ever come up with.
Yeah.
It's the safest form of transportation available. So, bad news is more sudden. Battles, bombings, accidents, murders, storms, floods, disasters. They're
Pandemics.
sudden. The news dominates with that sort of thing. As if it bleeds, it leads. And part of the reason it dominates with it is because that's unusual. See, this is the other weird thing. That is, we are, and he goes into this next thing eventually, is that from a survival standpoint, noticing something that's out of joint, that's not quite right, is to your advantage. That is, those early primates that reacted strongly to the noise in the bushes are the ones that are still, lived long enough to reproduce. The ones that said, it's probably nothing, not so much.
Yeah.
Even though 99% of the time it was nothing. And see, that's the point. That is, the bad things are very unusual. That is, think about the news. The news does not tell you about all the people that got up in the morning, drove to work, put in a normal work day, came home at night, had dinner, watched TV, went to bed, washed, repeat. What the news will report is the guy that went to the work and shot up all his coworkers, because that doesn't happen very often. If it happened all the time, then the news wouldn't report on that. It'd report on something else. In the media, the newsworthy events exaggerate the unusual and put the focus on swift change, Matt Ridley points out. And of course, like I said, bad news is what usually matters as well, because that's what you have to pay attention to. If you have this nice, clean, white building and there's a black spot on it, your eye will go to the little black spot, not the 99.99% of the building that's perfect. It's the problem that you focus on.
The good part, though, about having the negative or the mistakes pointed out is that you can do something to fix those, like with the Challenger exploding. It was a horrible tragedy. It was awful, and it was hard for our country. It was particularly hard on the families of the astronauts. But they learned from that, and they learned that they can't blast off a shuttle in freezing temperatures. And so they also learned about the communication issues within NASA, because it was a known issue and everybody kept sweeping under the rug because they wanted to launch. And instead of fixing the problem, they were hoping that and they really just, threw the dice at every single launch. And then finally they came up and they crapped out.
Yeah.
So
the shuttle actually was just the term for it was the Proxmired vehicle. William Proxmire was a senator who was notorious for trying to shortchange things, that is, to save money. And it was not what it could have been, and it's to some extent because of congressional interference in the design.
What will be a good thing, like with SpaceX and that launching, is, well, first of all, because I've been kind of following what you're following with. I follow you following SpaceX.
Yes,
I'm not all into it.
It's my hobby, not
But
hers.
right, but I'm interested in it, and so, but what they do now is that they test all the tolerances of their vehicles. Like, okay, we know it can carry this much fuel, but what if we put in this much or this much? Okay, now we know what will make it explode when we fill it.
Yeah, they test it to failure.
Right,
and
they
know.
Right, and they do things figuring it'll probably fail. Like when the Mars thing, what was that thing called? Starship. When it went up, which was awesome, I watched it with 4 of my students. I was doing some makeup testing with them, and not testing makeup. They were doing finishing up a test I'm having to finish. So they stayed after class, and then I told them, I said, well, the launch is set to happen in like 8 minutes. You guys have like 10 minutes of testing left. I said, so in 5 minutes, I'm going to have you log out, and then you can watch the launch with me. And knowing there were no humans on it, I didn't worry about any trauma that might happen to them if people died. So anyway, so the thing blasted off beautifully, and it did its belly flop thing beautifully.
Which was the hard thing. That was the thing, the key thing they wanted to test.
Right.
Because they'd never done that before.
But then, when it uprighted itself and it lost an engine, it just pile drove itself right into the launch pad. Yeah.
Landing pad.
I mean, it landed where it was supposed to. It was spot on. Everything went perfectly,
if they hadn't lost pressure in their methane tank, it would have landed properly.
But the thing is, they have the Starship 9, and they're, okay, now we'll haul it out. We'll make sure that doesn't happen again and bring it out and put it on the launch pad.
They're actually building up. They've got number 9 is about ready to go. 10 is almost ready to go. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 are in various stages of being ready. So they're producing a factory that makes these things.
Right, but because
and improving each one.
Because it's not
but these
funded
are all
by Congress, right? And because it's not funded by Congress, they can go ahead and just, and plus they're doing it so much more cheaply than what NASA could do. They just keep making a bunch that they figure, okay, we're probably going to throw these away, but if they survive, we can use them again.
Right.
So
until
anyway,
they get them perfected.
Right, until it's right, because then once you put humans in it, the worry about something going badly isn't it? Like when driving goes off.
Yeah, see, they want to make these as safe as taking a flight, to Europe. They're not at that point yet.
Right.
But that's the goal.
Right. But so, but learning from those failures will make things better and safer in the future. So,
yeah.
But, and we were at the end of the 10-minute segment. I had to, I'm going to sneeze.
Preemptive.
I have Facebook up on here because apparently I'm running 2 watch parties, but I can't get to them both on my phone.
Oh.
So I have one of my watch parties here, so I'm watching for people to comment. That's why I keep leaning over, and I had to start Facebook over again. It was stuck. And I've got one on my phone, and then I've got Facebook here, and I've got YouTube there.
But nobody's
said anything yet or asked any questions.
We'll just
so
go on.
Right. So we're going to start another 10-minute segment, and so continue.
Yeah. Now, one of the other weird things, Matt Ridley points this out in his article, is that as the world improves, people expand their definition of what bad news is. And this is a recent finding and he says it's a recent finding by the Harvard psychologists David Lavari and Daniel Gilbert, known as prevalence-induced concept change. And so the less common something becomes, the more broadly people redefine the concept. And one of the experiments that they did is they had a piece of paper that has a bunch of different colored dots on it. And they're supposed to locate blue dots. And so they started out with, lots of blue dots and, all sorts of other colored dots. And they kept reducing the number of blue dots. And eventually people started identifying purple dots as blue dots. Because it was close to being blue.
Interesting.
Yeah. if they, the rarer they made threatening faces, the more likely people were to describe a face as threatening. See, Weird Al Yankovic highlights this problem in a song, First World Problems. The thread count on these cotton sheets has got me itching. My house is so big I can't get Wi-Fi in the kitchen. And you see this, for instance, in race relations. That is, if you go back to, say, the 1920s, you have African Americans being lynched. Now it's microaggressions. That is, the problem is so much less now that now the problem is a microaggression, which is an interesting, obvious example of this sort of thing. There's other psychological effects that also come into play. There is a tendency to remember the good things about the past and to forget all the bad things that you've gone through. This is a phenomenon known as the reminiscence bump. People have rosy nostalgia about the days of their youth, and of course you're young and you're healthy, and of course
someone else is paying your bills.
Somebody else is paying your bills, and so you don't have the same level of problems.
The toilet's clogged, it won't go down.
To the
Use
other
the other
toilet.
one. They're not connected. Well, I can't help you, sorry. We're in the middle of a show. Okay. Sorry.
Thanks for sighing at me.
Anyway, so
what I was going to say is, I was watching. It must have been with Brittany, watching TV with her, and she was saying, "Boy, it would have been nice to have lived in the '50s." I'm like, "Yeah," and I wasn't alive in the '50s. I just want you to know. But from the research, what I've read about it, I mean, racism was like huge. There were, women. The status of women was really poor. If you watch Mad Men, that'll let you know right there. I mean, that's kind of in the '60s, but.
Yeah,
still,
but even in the 60s, it was still not very good.
The status of women was really bad.
If you were gay, it's not going to be a very comfortable place to be.
No, you had to totally hide that. I mean, there were so many things that that were just so bad. I mean, if you were white and middle class, maybe you lived like Leave It to Beaver. But
then you had no Wi-Fi, no Netflix.
Well, you don't know what you don't know. But no, my point is, but even still, spousal abuse, you did not talk about that. So you might have lived with Ward Cleaver. You might have been Ward Cleaver's wife, but he might have beaten the snot out of you before he left for work, and you have to cover it up with makeup, put your pearls on, and keep vacuuming. And
it just wasn't said. Child abuse, all these things, they were happening, but they weren't an issue.
Yeah. So the past isn't how you remember it or what you see in the movies.
Yes.
So, but like I was saying too, because like the 60s for me was wonderful because I was little. I mean, in 1969, I was 6 years old. So up to that point, somebody else was paying my bills. Somebody else made my lunch for me. I didn't have to make my own food. I didn't have to go to work. So I was oblivious to a lot of the things that were happening. Now, of course, I heard the news, but I don't remember a lot about it. I do remember the moon landing. I do remember that there were bad things on the news, but I don't remember exactly what they were. Now I know as an adult it was the riots and, the assassinations.
Part of
and
that is
like
because
that.
you've learned the history, too.
Well, now I know what it was. Then I knew there was bad stuff. Oh, I knew about the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So I knew about that, and I remember when
I knew about it because
they
my dad
came
went
home.
to it twice.
When the POWs came home, I remember that. But anyway, so people think that, our country is going downhill and all that kind of stuff. But
again, an accurate understanding of history and being able to keep perspective will help with this. And then also, the statistics are interesting. And the source of these statistics is not, anything weird. That's, mainline information. United Nations data, CIA data. I mean, the data's out there. It's well researched. It's well done. It's reliable. And the data just does not support the idea that the world is getting worse and worse. Quite the opposite. Fewer people are dying. Steven Pinker, in his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, and then also in his book, Enlightenment Now, one of the things that he points out is levels of violence have declined in the last 100 years significantly. That is, if you look at the number of deaths in wars, it's, a drop, and the number of wars is less now. Same thing with criminal violence. It's less. Everything that you would hope to trend in a downward way is going down. Everything that you'd hope would go up is going up. Overall prosperity is skyrocketing. And parts of the world that have the fastest economic growth rate right now are places that are the poorest. As places like India or Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, doing far better than what one would imagine based on what you think is going on there. Their GDP is growing about 8 or 9% right now, which is really good. The average individual living in Africa is making do on $40 a day, which is considerably above the extreme poverty level. I mean, it's poor by Western standards, but compared to what they had, it's really good. That is, they're not in danger of starving. In fact, starvation is no longer a factor in the world. That is, the only time you have starvation now in the world are in those areas that are suffering from war or have extremely incompetent governments. And that's not very many places.
Right.
And yet, if you go back to the 19th century, people were starving in France in certain periods of time back then, which is hard to even fathom. The biggest problem that human beings face now is not starvation, it's obesity.
Yeah.
Which is, obesity is not a good thing, but it's preferable to starvation.
Right.
Obesity, it takes a lot longer to kill you.
And you get to eat chocolate cake while you do
Exactly.
it. So there you go.
And the amount of money that people have to spend to live well keeps going down as well. That is, the average middle-class person in the Western world lives better than billionaires did at the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah, was it something that we were watching, or you had posted?
I may have posted.
No, this was, maybe it was Scott Adams that was talking about it. But if you give people a choice between, would you rather have, who's the famous rich guy from
Nelson
like the 20s?
Rockefeller?
Yeah, Nelson Rockefeller's money or the money you have now. People say, oh, of course I would have his money. Well, if you adjust for the value of the dollar, inflation, things like that, you actually may have more money than he did at that time.
Right.
So,
and you live much more comfortably.
yes.
That is, you can have oranges in the winter, and he probably couldn't.
Right.
You have air conditioning, he didn't. You have antibiotics, he didn't.
Yep.
Calvin Coolidge's son died of an infection in his foot from playing tennis. He's like 10 or 12 years old. And there's just nothing he could do. This was in the 1920s, about 3 or 4 years before penicillin was discovered.
Right. Okay, so we're at the end of the segment. Rick said he's listening but has no questions. He can come up with something interesting if needed, though. And then he put
okay.
haha after. So go ahead and come up with something interesting if you want.
Okay. Well, some of you may have heard of the book called The Population Bomb. It was written by a guy named Paul Ehrlich, who people still listen to, even though he's never been right about much of anything. He has predicted doom and gloom on a regular basis, and Population Bomb was predicting that we'd be starving to death by the year 2000.
I remember learning about overpopulation in school in the 70s, and that, that sometime I don't remember what the year was, that there's going to be too many people and there won't be enough food for
Yeah,
everybody.
that was from Paul
And
Ehrlich.
I went to my dad about it because it kind of had me a little scared.
Yeah, well, that was
and
the
he
point.
said, we'll figure it out,
And that's the point.
Yeah.
And see, this is what Paul Ehrlich and other people along those lines fail to reckon with, is that human beings are incredibly good at solving problems. And when there is a problem, we tend to solve it.
Well, that's why this whole...
And the more people you have, the more brains you have that can solve the problems. And see, the weird thing, it's counterintuitive, but as the population has grown, world prosperity has grown even faster. The cost of resources has gone down, and the amount of resources have gone up, even as beyond what it was before the population was going up. And of course, the reason the population is growing is not because we're making more babies. We're actually making less babies now than ever before in world history. Europe actually is below replacement rate. As you have to do 2.1, that is, a couple has to have 2.1 children in order to replace, because you have a certain amount of children not surviving.
It's that 0.1 child that's hard to have.
Yeah.
The 2, piece of cake, but 0.1 is hard.
But Europe is like at about 1.7 or whatever now. But again, as prosperity grows up, the number of children people have goes down, which is interesting.
Because you can afford dogs then.
Yeah.
And
Well,
they're less
actually, the
trouble.
world population is going to peak probably around 2050 or 2060 and then start declining. And that could become a problem, actually,
Oh.
if it declines
I'll be
too
dead
much.
by then, so it doesn't matter. I'll be 100 in 2063.
Oh.
So.
But anyway,
That is my children's issue. They need to figure that one out.
yeah. Anyway, Paul Ehrlich, he was, or is, he may still be there, Stanford University biology professor. And he famously claimed that population growth would result in resource depletion and the starvation of hundreds of millions of people. And what happened is that, let's see, where is it? Should have it here. He and, what was his name? Yes.
While you're doing that, while you're looking that up,
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about climate change, because you listen to people like that teenage girl from Denmark or wherever she's from, the one that cries, that like, oh, we're all going to die in 12 years. Well, the thing is that we're not. We've already been through this, the whole population explosion thing, and it ended up, actually more people ended up being better. But whether climate change is real, if it's as severe as they're saying, if it's caused by human activity, whatever,
We'll be able to fix
we'll
it.
figure it out. We'll fix it. There's really smart people working on it. It's not, I don't have the expertise to work on it.
Any
but-
problem that is a slow building problem,
Yeah.
human beings have always managed to solve them.
Yeah.
Always. And one of the questions you have to ask yourself is based on the past, the fact that we always solve the problems, why do we imagine that this one we won't be able to?
Right.
That is, and the way we solve the problems is through technological advancement, not by freezing things or reducing consumption or whatever.
Taking things away.
Taking things
Like
away.
the car.
Yeah, taking things away. That's not the way you solve the problem. The way you solve the problem is by technological advance, innovating. And innovation is what solves it. And we actually have things on the table that will solve any
Even
problem.
sudden things, though, we're able to overcome.
Yeah, like
the PPE issue with COVID.
Well, even coming up with a solution to the pandemic. That
Right.
is, there are now 2 vaccines that are available.
And one
In record
vaccine,
time.
one vaccine was developed at the very beginning of the pandemic, like in January.
In January, but
before they even
they
shut
had
down
to do
transport.
testing
I
and
understand that,
stuff. Okay.
but that was my point.
Okay, sorry.
So the vaccine was actually ready, like it was there. They had it in January, but they had to do the testing, and that can oftentimes take many, 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 many years because a lot of the regulation and things like that. And they sped it up. They did a lot of the things concurrently. And now they've seen they may not even need the phase 1 trials. They can go to the other phases. And so we'll have medications and
Much
things
faster
coming
now
out
in the
faster in the future, which is a huge advancement.
Yep.
So, yeah, so a lot of good things. We were talking about this on the way here. A lot of good things will come out of the pandemic if we keep doing them. Like, for example, so I had a real chuckle today because, so Weight Watchers, we've been weighing ourselves in at home, recording it in our Weight Watcher app, and then you go to a Zoom meeting. Well, last Saturday, our Weight Watcher leader said that Weight Watchers was closing down the local Zoom meetings. You could go to a national one if you still want, like they have some like Tennessee or wherever, but you could go to one of those. But our local one was shutting down, and we all, reacted badly. I'm like, and my point was, it wasn't like now I have to go to Weight Watchers to do my meeting because I don't have a problem going places and being in rooms with people. But my reaction to it was this was stupid on their part. It was a miscalculation because our numbers are going up in California like a lot. So why would you force people into that situation? So when I reserved my spot because it's limited space, has to be 6 feet apart. They clean everything. It's nuts. But anyway, so I go to the meeting. There were like 6 of us there. And I've got my phone on my leg because I'm watching this, my Facebook Messenger, because there was a group of us talking about, what meeting did you find to go to and things like that, and how do you sign up for the in-person meetings and everything. So I'm watching this chat and I'm kind of interacting during the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, my leader goes, and I have some news for you. And I went, now what? And she goes, because of the CDC rules, Weight Watchers is shutting down all the California studios, and you have to go back to your Zoom meeting. So 1 week, I had to drive to Palmdale to go to my Weight Watcher meeting. So now we're going, and I just laughed. I mean, it was like a full-on belly laugh, like I was listening to a really good comedian, and she couldn't believe how hard I was laughing. I mean, it was almost literally rolling on the floor laughing, except I was still in my chair. I just kept laughing because I knew this was going to happen. I wish I had said it out loud, and I wish I had said, watch, next week they'll tell us we're coming back to Zoom, but I didn't, and I wish I had, because I knew this was going to happen. I knew they were going to shut it down, and I wish I had said it out loud, because then people would be like, oh my gosh, you knew it. I mean, I know it in my head, but anyway, you can say that. But anyway, so yeah, so now all the Weight Watcher meetings are shut down, and we're talking about in the future, this will be a good thing. People that maybe don't have access to go to a Weight Watcher meeting can get their meetings online. And really, if you're struggling and you just want to go to an extra meeting, you can go, like before we could go at different times to our Weight Watcher studio whenever they were having a meeting. But now you could probably find a meeting somewhere any time of the day or in the evenings, and you could just go by Zoom and check them out. So, that's a really good thing that will come out of this.
Right.
But it was just kind of absurd, the whole thing.
Yeah. Anyway, going back to Paul Ehrlich and his book, The Population Bomb, very popular. A lot of people got on board with his idea that, things are going to go to hell in a handbasket. We're going to be starving to death, we'll run out of resources, and everything's going to go bad. And a professor, Julian Simon, from the University of Maryland, decided to make a bet with Paul Ehrlich on a selection of resources that Paul Ehrlich would pick. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, come, say, 1990, let's see, the bet was agreed to September 29th, 1980. September 29th, 1990 would be the payoff date. And so Paul Ehrlich selected a group of materials, and the way the bet went was that if the real price of the basket was higher at the end of the period than at the beginning, that would indicate that the materials had become more precious and more rare, or rarer, and that Ehrlich would win the wager. If the prices were lower, then Simon would win. And the stakes would be the ultimate price difference of the basket at the beginning and the end of the period. And so Ehrlich chose copper, chromium, nickel, tin, and tungsten as the materials that he thought would go up in price because they had become less common, and the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And so in spite of a population increase of 873 million over the 10 years that the bet was ongoing, Ehrlich lost the wager. All 5 commodities that he had selected declined in price by an average of 57.6%.
Wow.
Ehrlich then mailed a check for $576.07 to Simon. It didn't change Ehrlich's attitudes, though. He continues to think this way, despite having lost the bet. And despite the fact that in the years since then, the cost of those materials has declined even more significantly, and the cost of everything keeps dropping in real terms. Now, you have to adjust for inflation, but real prices, which is the term they're using, are on the downward slope.
Well, it's interesting. Today I was trying to explain to Brittany about inflation because I noticed that like she wanted me to buy her some of those banquet meals are only $1. Well, I was going to buy them at Albertsons, and I was like, wow, they're kind of expensive here. I'll wait till I go to Walmart because I knew they were $1 at Walmart.
Yeah.
No, they're the same price. Walmart, the price of them have gone up, and food prices have gone up because of the pandemic and trying to make up for lost profits and things like that.
Yeah.
So Brittany said, why did the price of them go up? And I said, well, inflation. I go, we just are printing money because it's an emergency, and that causes inflation. She didn't ask me how that works. I'm glad because I'm not an economist. I kind of get it. But anyway, so it was kind of funny. It's like, because the pandemic, banquet meals are now $1.24 instead of $1. So.
Yeah.
But that's a huge jump in price, though. That's like a quarter more.
Yeah. But, the pandemic is a temporary problem, and positives will come out of it.
Right.
Advancements in technology.
The economy was so strong.
We could handle it.
We could handle it. If we had had a weaker economy,
it would have been more devastating.
Oh, man, it would have been really bad on the economy. So.
Yeah. And so, for instance, when you think in terms of climate change, again, it's something that is fixable. And again, counterintuitively, some of the indicators are not bad. Back in whenever it was, the 90s, people worried about acidification of rain and depletion of forests and that sort of thing. The amount of forests has actually gone up since the 1990s, despite the increase in population. And actually, the amount of land that is devoted to agriculture has declined even as food production has risen. That was another thing. The Green Revolution back in the 70s and 80s, Norman, his name just went
Vincent Peale?
No, Borlaug.
Norm Peterson from Cheers?
Norm Borlaug, he got the Nobel Prize for his work. He, by himself, is probably responsible for saving about 1 billion lives because the improvements he instituted in agriculture. India went from being a net importer of food to now being a net exporter of food. And yet Ehrlich was predicting that India would be starving to death. And of course it's not. It's quite the opposite. They're actually pretty prosperous at this point. I mean, they're launching rockets into space and doing a pretty good job of it. Although SpaceX is still cheaper than even India at launching things. But yeah, places that Paul Ehrlich were predicting would be horrendous nightmares are doing okay. So, anyway, Steven Pinker wrote 2 books that are quite useful. I recommend, if you're going to pick between the two of them, to pick his more recent book, Enlightenment Now, just because it's not as thick and it's not as statistics heavy. But if you want more of the raw data, his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, is, I'd still highly recommend both of them, and I would recommend that one. But I acknowledge that it's a very heavy book. Enlightenment Now is easier to read through. And it's the more recent book. If you want something that's even easier to read through than Matt Ridley's book, The Rational Optimist would be, again, cover many of the same things. Peter Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize Foundation, also wrote a book called Abundance Now, which discusses many of the same sorts of issues and is useful, but it does not give you quite the level of statistics. And a lot of what Diamandis talks about, you'll find in Matt Ridley's book anyway. So, or in the other two. One of the things that you'll hear this in the news often, is a concern with inequality of, prosperity. That is, that the whole concept that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and that gap somehow creates problems. And the reality is that it probably doesn't. That is, the fact that somebody else is doing better than you doesn't really impact you in any significant way.
Except it makes you maybe envious.
Yeah, but envy
and
is
that's
not
more of a sin problem than it is a financial issue.
Yeah, that is, if your issue is that you feel envious or covetous towards those that are doing better than you, then the issue is not that the person is doing better than you, the issue is with you.
Right.
But we'd rather blame the other person being. It's like the guys that get mad at the way women are dressed. It's like, no, the problem's not with how they're dressed. The problem is with what's going on inside your head.
That's right.
Well, you're not responsible for what you're thinking.
Yeah. Well, before the pandemic, there were more jobs than there were workers.
Right.
So if you needed a better job, it was super easy to get one because they needed workers. And what happened as a result was those lower end wages were going up. Rather than raising the minimum wage, if you provide a surplus of jobs, like
Wages
bring companies back to the country, reduce regulations so that they can provide more jobs, you make it a job-rich environment, not fake jobs, but real jobs. And like, for example, our daughter works for Amazon, and they are building more, what do they call them, stations everywhere, because the demand for packages is so high because of the pandemic. So if you need a better job, just go work for Amazon.
And they promote relatively quickly.
They do. And our daughter, once she finished her bachelor's degree, she went from being level 1 to being a level 4. And you can, like, I have a master's degree, so I could be making more money if I work for Amazon than I am teaching. So when I retire, if I decide I want to go work for Amazon, I wouldn't be working sorting packages. I would be doing something less physically taxing, which would be better for someone my age. Yeah, sorting people. But you go home, you go work over there.
Yeah.
But
that's what managers do. They
exactly,
sort people.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, there are a lot of jobs to be had out there. If you don't have a job, I mean, I know with the pandemic there's an issue.
Are a mess.
Right. But
it's a temporary problem.
Right. And there are plenty of jobs. And really, even with the pandemic, there's still a lot of jobs out there.
Right.
I mean, grocery stores were hiring like crazy.
Amazon is hiring.
Amazon's still hiring. Yep, they're building like nuts. Well, even like, okay, so in Texas, my brother lives near Houston.
SpaceX is hiring.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to just say.
Tesla's hiring. Sorry.
So we have to talk about this off camera. You're
Apparently
walking
so.
over me. But like, my brother lives outside of Houston, and he works for the oil companies. And there was a concern there for a while with Saudi Arabia, and the problem got fixed, but that our oil prices were going to tank out because of stuff that was going on with Saudi Arabia. And so I was concerned that he might lose his job. And so I talked to him. I said, Brownsville is only 5 hours south of you, and he has experience with welding. They will train you on what they need you to do. I mean, of course, they're not going to train you as a senior software engineer, but you can have some kind of a job. And I told him, I said, if you guys, they don't own their house there, they're renting, they could easily move, and all of them could work for SpaceX. They could find a job and all have jobs with SpaceX. And that's a job that's going to be there for a while because this is space exploration. And, and it's a private company. It's not like all of a sudden Congress is going to go, yeah, we don't want to pay for this anymore, and they have to lay a bunch of people off. So it's not like aerospace here that,
it's dependent on the government for primary income. For SpaceX, it's primarily private.
Right.
So commercial space.
Yeah.
So they launched 25 Falcon 9s this past year, new record for them.
Yeah, I heard when you were watching the launch when I was sleeping.
Sorry.
25 this year.
Yeah, I got up at 6 o'clock this morning, stayed in bed, had my Kindle, watched the launch on that, then went back to sleep.
Most of the time I sleep through it, but I was in that place where it was sort of time for me to get up. So I was kind of in that twilight sleep so I could hear the launch go.
Yes.
I'm interested in it, but not enough to get up and watch it. So.
Yeah. I've had to get up several times this past year to
watch launches.
Not 25 times, because a lot of times they launch at a reasonable hour, but not this morning.
And when you finally get a new Fitbit, you can set it as an alarm, and I don't have to hear Alexa. Sorry, I don't have to hear her. She who should not be named. Go off, go bling bling, and you have to say,
so
you
our
know who,
listeners
stop.
have her.
Yes.
You don't want to set her off.
Yeah, watching The Voice was annoying because they were talking to the GOOGLE assistant,
Yes.
and we have that on our phones, so our phones would start reacting to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and on our WebEx meetings for school, kids aren't allowed to mention ALEXA. They're not allowed to mention GOOGLE.
Right.
So.
Yes, new forbidden words.
Yes.
Yeah, Carlin would not do the 7.
Say Beetlejuice as much as you want, but don't say ALEXA.
Yes, Carlin would have to do a new routine on the new
George
7.
Carlin, yeah.
Yes, new 7
Words you can't
that
say
you
in
can't
public.
say in public.
So,
Oh dear.
but we've not had any additional
That's so weird.
comments, but we do have people watching and
Well, that's
interacting.
good.
So, agreeing and laughing and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So, and inequality actually is also on the decline. Again, because the lower and middle classes keep getting more and more wealthy. Yes, there are more. The wealthy people are doing well in addition to the poor and the middle class, but everybody's on an upward trend.
Well, and here's the thing that people fail to recognize. The wealthy are rich because they're providing jobs.
Yeah,
and
you don't go to a homeless person if you need a job.
Right. So the people that have the money are the ones that provide jobs, even if they're hiring people to work in their houses, like a maid or a cook or something like that, or they're hiring an accountant or a financial advisor, anything like that. Even if they don't, you don't have to be Jeff Bezos to employ people.
And use Jeff Bezos as an example. People get mad. He's got $100 billion or however much it is, or $180 billion. And the critics apparently imagine that he's sitting in his basement with these stacks of $180
Rolling
billion
around in it
dollars.
naked.
Yeah, he's rolling around in it naked. No. This time of the year, we commonly watch a movie. What's the name of it?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. And one of the scenes there, you have the panic with the banks, and people come into his building loan, and they want their money back. And he explains to them, your money's not sitting back here in the vault. It's in your house and that person's business, and so on. Jeff Bezos's money is not stacks of bills. His money is his business. That is, Amazon is what Amazon is, hundreds of thousands of people are working there and being paid by that. The stock price is where his money is, if you want to call it. But you can't just, take it all out.
And working for Amazon isn't even about what you make hourly. I mean, they have stock options that they give people that to their full-time employees. They have bonuses. For everybody, they bring food.
Yeah, they feed them.
Yeah, my daughter has a credit
Catered type
card
stuff.
that is the company's card that she can take to a place, say Chick-fil-A, and order 100,000 chicken nuggets and take them to the site and feed chicken nuggets to everybody for lunch. I don't know what they do, but anyway,
it's an example.
Right. So, and there's an allowance on it. She can't go out and buy herself a car or whatever. That would be nice. But it's so that she can buy things for the employees to enrich their lives. When she was a level 1, she would get fed periodically. She'd send me Snapchats of her food, and it's like, ooh, we had tacos today, and so there's a lot of benefits to working for Amazon. We're gonna get money from Amazon now for advertising. That'd be nice.
It's just that we have personal experience with it. You hear these negative things in the news.
Right.
That's not the way things are on a normal basis. Right. Certainly, I'm sure there are problems. No company or group are perfect. But overall, it seems not a bad place to work based on the experience of my daughter, her boyfriend, other people that we know. They seem pretty happy there.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty rare if I get a bonus at my job because I work for the government.
Yes.
And nobody feeds me.
Working for the government has some perks for it.
Right. Well, you're always going to have an income.
That's one of the things with working
You're
for the
not going to get rich working for the government, but you will have steady work and steady income.
And your benefits are usually pretty good.
Right. And although ours have gotten worse over the years. But what was I going to say? If you need stability in your life, working for the government is a good thing. Work for the post office, work for the school district, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty stress-free.
The DMV, yeah. But if you want perks and the chance to make more money, then you work in the private sector. But see, here's the difference. In the government sector, you're pretty much guaranteed your job unless you're really a failure at life. Sorry to anybody that might be listening that got fired from a government job.
Your life really sucks.
But when you work in the private sector, you work at their will. So they can fire you at any time. I mean, if you work for the government, you have especially if you have a union, you have some protections that you can appeal things or whatever. But it's not that you can't be fired, it's just harder. And if you work for the federal government, you get paid more than if you work for county or state government because it's larger. There's more money. Like if you're a contractor in aerospace, their employees get paid significantly more than like a teacher or somebody that works at a post office or something like that. So if you need steady employment where you don't have to worry about getting laid off or fired on a moment's notice, government's the way to go. If you want kind of that little riskier edge where okay, I can work for Amazon, but if things drop off, I might get laid off, or if I screw something up, I could get fired. Because you have more opportunity to make more money there.
Yeah.
So it's really it's a
choice
cost.
You make. Life is a matter of the choices you make of it.
Risk benefit analysis that you have to do for what job you want to have.
But the bottom line is that despite the pandemic, we are generally speaking living in the most prosperous, most comfortable period ever in world history. And things are going to, based on past performance, we have every reason to expect things to continue to improve.
Right. Oh, here's the other thing I want to mention too, is entrepreneurs, they tend to make more money because they're taking on the risk and
They
really
also lose more money too.
That's where I was going to go.
Sorry.
If the company loses money, so let's say that Amazon's in a decline and loses money, his employees still get paid. If you work 8 hours, you're getting paid for that 8 hours. Bezos isn't going to get paid because he's the guy at the top. If it's not making a profit, he's not getting paid. But the people at the bottom still get paid, unless, of course, they do layoffs. But so the entrepreneur, the person who builds the widget and starts a widget factory, he takes all the risk. He has to pay the insurance. He has to have coverage for his employees. He's got to do like the whole business plan. He's got to take out the loans for the business loans for the machinery, for the building, all that kind of stuff. And it's him that doesn't get paid until the company starts making a profit. But the key to being an entrepreneur is to hang in there until it makes a profit and keep fixing things and adjusting things until it starts to turn a profit. And that's when you make the big money. So, people are like, oh, Jeff Bezos, he makes all this money and, the level ones are only making $13 an hour. Well, you could start your own Amazon. Go ahead.
Some other business.
How much capital do you have to do that? Probably not much. Find a bank that'll give you the money. Oh, can't do that either. So
and go back to when he started Amazon, his odds of success were not very high.
Yep, they were not. And if you look at it, most billionaires have been bankrupt at some time in their life. I do not.
Oftentimes, multiple times.
Yes, I've never declared bankruptcy. I don't have a lot of money. I don't make a whole lot of money. I don't make as much as Jeff Bezos by any stretch of the imagination. But my income is steady. Like I know I'm getting paid next month. So, but whereas as an entrepreneur, you don't know that. If everything tanked for some reason with Amazon, he would be in a heap load of trouble because he owns all these buildings and properties that he's got to pay on. He's got insurance. He has to pay like liability kind of insurances on his employees, like at workman's comp, you get hurt on the job. You don't pay for it. Amazon pays for it, and that comes out of their profits, which comes out of Bezos's income, basically.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's a little lesson in economics that a lot of people don't seem to understand.
Most people have no clue about economics.
Particularly like CNN that thinks you could each be a millionaire if you take one billionaire's money and divide it out. It's like, oh no, it's more like $17.
Even if you took all, I think it's like 788 billionaires that are in the United States, their combined assets are about 3.4 trillion. If you divide that between the population of the United States, then that would mean each human being in the United States would get 10,000 something odd dollars.
Would it be that much?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was way small. I thought it was like $17 or something.
No, if you took
all the billionaires,
all the billionaires,
okay,
added it all up in a big pile,
mm-hmm.
and you could actually liquidate it into cash, then you could redistribute all that to every human being in the United States, and all of them would have $10,000.
Which is that $1,000 guaranteed income. That's only 10 months. That's less than a year.
Yeah.
You can't live on $10,000.
And then it would all be gone.
Yeah.
There'd be no jobs, and yeah. Killing the goose that
yes.
lays the golden eggs is what
because you want to see
doing.
how it works.
Yeah.
There's a fable about that, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. You want to know how the goose was laying the golden eggs so he could.
Yeah, but most people,
more.
and particularly most politicians, most people in the news media, most pundits have no idea about how economics work at all.
Mm-hmm.
They all need to take at least one semester's worth of basic economics.
And now that you can go to school online,
so stupid sounding.
Take a course from your local community college. It'll cost you $30. Take a course and learn some economics. I had a really good economics teacher in high school, so that's how I learned
anyway,
it.
We're out
anyway,
of time.
We are way out of time. Oh, okay. And then hold on. So Steve said, "Love listening to you guys. Merry Christmas." And Rick said, "I figured out why you were not seeing my comments. This is the watch party I wrote on the broadcast." Oh, but no, I saw it. Wait a minute. Did it not? No, it didn't. Wait, that's not a touch screen.
No, it's not.
Is it not scrolling?
Not scroll.
Rick, it's... Oh, no. Okay. No, it's not scrolling. I'm sorry. So he said... Oh, scroll up. Hold on. Is that the whole thing? See, I don't have the mouse. That's an issue. We need to fix that.
Yeah.
So he said, scroll up all the way to the top.
Well, this we have.
Okay, there we go. So he said, I'm with you on overall economy war, et cetera, but how do you deal with the increase in sexual trafficking or increase of pornography? You can say it has always been there, but it's not in this scope. I would argue it is worse. The internet serves as a porn evangelist, and if we argue that Christian evangelism changes the amount of Christianity, surely porn evangelism increases the amount of sexual perversity. And then he said, not sure why you guys aren't seeing my... And, okay, so it's not that everything is better. There are some things that are worse. Do you want to address that? We could continue it next week.
Yeah, we could continue it.
Or we could make that a show topic.
Yeah, we could make that a show topic.
That'll get a lot of people.
Yeah,
Porn
well-
evangelism. And
No, please don't. I don't like even hearing you say porn.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
okay, our daughter's commenting from the sidelines. Okay, don't do that, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will see you guys next Saturday. It's the day after Christmas.
No, probably not.
Okay, the next Saturday is the day after New Year's Day. We should be recovered by. It's not New Year's Day. It's
The day after New Year's Day, so we should be fine.
should-
with
okay.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, we won't be hungover anymore. Just
I am
kidding.
definitely not letting them drink, just letting you know.
Okay, so anyway, so we'll see you on January 2nd
Right.
at 4:00.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Anyway, you guys have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New
Merry
Year. And we'll see you
Christmas.
in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
I don't know.